Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the Speak and Flow podcast, where we share unique experiences to help you unleash your leadership voice. Today, we have an amazing leader, conscious communication coach, Jason Jones. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Melinda. So great to be in your podcast. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. It's so great to connect again. I've known you for quite a while. You've been a conscious communication coach for over a decade now. So before we even dive into the meat of it, which is going to be great, all about asking the right questions to influence people, I'm curious, how did conscious communications coach get born? It's an amazing title. And
Oh, how did that become a thing?
yeah.
Well, it was definitely an evolution because my former title, I was like business coaching and doing business coaching. And what I discovered is that I was doing lots and lots of strategy with people. Do this strategy, try this technique, try this. This has worked. Do all that. And I found it to be I would say effective like maybe half of the time. And I started to look and recognize that there were barriers for people that weren't the strategy. It wasn't the thing to do. The barriers were more within them. And the conscious aspect comes out because the way that I focus on communication coaching is developing someone's ability to be able to see someone else for what is happening for someone else, which is distinct from what is the normative behavior, which is I project onto you what and who I think you are, Melinda, and I make all kinds of assumptions about how you look, about how you dress, about what you say, and I treat all those assumptions like it's the truth, and then I talk to you that way.
Right.
And that produces a certain kind of experience. And most of the time, it can be an okay experience. It could also be a not so good experience because I'm not actually seeing you, Melinda. I'm seeing all the assumptions that I have about you. And when you're communicating in a conscious way, that is you putting effort into understanding who you're speaking to and understand where they're coming from in an effort to look at their reality so you understand the context and the world they're living in.
Yeah.
And that informs what to say to them. It informs where the conversation goes, what there is to share.
It's interesting because because I think that all the people here, the audience members, we're exceptional. We're great leaders. So we can go in with these assumptions. I think, oh, I know this person. I believe I know this person. And you're saying that I see, even if I believe that, think that, I'm probably still going in with assumptions.
Well, we always do, and so what I'm not saying, for example, like that I don't operate under any assumptions at all. I have transcended that. No, I mean we're human beings, right?
Yeah.
And this is how we sort and compartmentalize. It's how our brain works. It's how we have to put things in categories so that we understand it. However, what happens, Melinda, is when you put the effort into witnessing and trying to see the person as they're showing up without judgment, without assessment, without evaluation, without wondering whether are they above me, below me, where are they, where do I fit with them, without setting all of that aside and just looking for and listening for who is it, I mean, who can trip us up, but who is it that is like really showing up here, the person.
Right.
And when you put the effort into your communication that way and into witnessing and seeing people that way, they experience you differently because what happens is they become seen.
I love that because, like, let's face it, I mean, every day I change. Every day that person probably is changing. Every day is different. Every moment is different. So why not look at that moment as a new moment?
Yeah.
Asking
Yeah.
the right
You got it right on.
Yeah.
So if we can run with this a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like imagine this as let's say an intimate partner, like your romantic partner,
Yeah.
spouse, partner, like the person you live with. You're with them every day, right?
Right. Right.
Now, what typically happens in a relationship? Like you meet somebody new, you're really attracted to them, they're amazing, right? And in those moments, yes, you're probably projecting what you want them to be on them, but you're also really paying attention. You're paying attention to like, oh, that's cool, or oh, I don't know, and you're avoiding, you don't want that kind of guy, or I want to watch out for this red flag, and you're really like really looking and really listening. And then after a while, you get comfortable with each other, and then you say, okay, well, let's be committed. And then yeah, now you're committed, so it's like,
Right.
oh, you relax a little bit,
Right.
and then
Right.
you've been together for a few years, and then suddenly they do something, and you're like, where'd this come from? You don't like jam. But I didn't think you liked trucks, right? Because we stop seeing the other person as they have grown,
Grown.
and we're seeing the person that we got the assessment of in those first times together.
Totally.
But
Totally.
all that we actually listen for
Mhm.
is what we know. So then when something where we feel blindsided, when they're different, when they change, same thing in work. Like,
Right.
why did Tom act that? Why did Tom say that? Like,
Right.
what's with Tom?
Right.
He's not being the way we expect him to be, kind of
Right.
thing. And then
Right.
we get what? We get agitated, like,
Right.
well, what's going on? Or there's a problem, or there's a problem with Tom, or we gotta, and then everybody gets into, we gotta do something. And
Right.
the only thing there is to do, Melinda, is to slow down and go see what's going on with Tom
It's such a
today.
good reminder. I
Who
was
is
just
Tom
agitated
today?
today. I was agitated today, and slow down. It's a great reminder to slow down and see what's happening with Tom. Ask the right questions.
Yeah,
What
get
about
into
like
that
these
world and get
get
present
into
to
their
that.
world? So what if I'm a team leader and I have an idea and I want my team to come on board, and I present my ideas and then there's resistance. Like we've been in that situation before where they're like, I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to do this. Like,
Sure. Well, the
This is-
first thing that I would invite that team leader to do is do not go in cold.
right.
And if you're going to be asking them to change things about what they're going to be doing that's going to be disruptive to them, because we know that any kind of change is disruptive to people. There is no good change.
Yeah.
Even if you throw a surprise birthday for somebody, majorly stressful. Like it is like first terror and then happiness that it's all their friends that said surprise, right? Because like people hate surprises, like
Yeah.
hate surprise as a norm. They
Yeah.
do. They like things predictable and for the most part, kind of generalized. So you're going to set yourself up for resistance
Mhm.
if you go in with you like a cold presentation,
Right.
right? And say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and let me tell you why it's going to be great.
Right.
And you're looking at their faces, and you're going like, why aren't they smiling? And it's like, this is really good. Let me keep talking and tell you why this is good. And
Good.
I'm really excited. It's like, well, I'm glad you're bought in, but I'm not feeling it over here. And what's missing, Melinda, is that you're coming in with a great idea to change the stuff that I do, but I feel invisible in that. I feel unseen. All this has happened away from me. I was not involved, or I was very minimally involved, right? And so if you're going to come in with a change, then what would make sense would be to send out an email and ask one or two very open-ended questions about those things or about the aspects of their job that are going to be affected by the change.
Okay.
How do you feel about? And
Okay.
feel is very important. How do you not think, but feel? How do you feel about this particular workflow or this particular process, or what is this kind of thing?
Right.
This does two things. One, it gives you an idea of like where they're at, so you know the listening that you're speaking into, so
Right.
that you can connect with what they're thinking as they're listening to you.
Right.
The other thing it does is it gives them an opportunity to actually process how they feel about those things. And then, like, for instance, if it's really inefficient and ineffective,
Right.
and it actually makes more work for people. For an example, and this is a
Right.
streamlined process. If
Right.
they process that out in a note for you, it's like,
Right.
well, it's all right, but it'd be better if it was like this, or if that way we didn't have to do that, or whatever. And they're being candid.
Right.
If you're in an environment where people feel safe to be candid with their direct reports, that's something to keep in mind. There has to be
Right.
a level of safety for this kind of sharing. But even it's still valuable to send out that questionnaire, because then they are going to have a chance to process it in their minds before they are blindsided with it, with your exciting news.
Right.
Like,
Right. But
guess
that's
what?
key
We're
though.
doing this and it's going to be
Yeah.
like that. And it's like, that's different. And different is like really disruptive. So if they've had some time to pre-process, now they actually are in a place that you can start engaging them with what's going on instead of kind of being met with maybe stony faced people, or like,
Yeah.
yay, or just giving you what they think they need to give you to
Right.
get out of the meeting and go grumble among themselves about what that is, because the resistance will not stop at the end of the meeting, even though the train is going with that change. There will be suffering and there will be conflict and there will be issues with employees that are related to that will show up in different aspects of the relationship.
And how do you, okay, so that email, that initial email is so crucial, I think. I mean, I think like you mentioned, maybe not all leaders will do that. And it's such a huge part. And do you recommend that they reach out to every single team member? And also, I think like the questions that you said, how do you feel about it is like so important, because I think there's a difference between interrogation, like they might think if they're asking me these questions, how I frame the answer is going to be crucial. So I think going back to, do we ask the whole team member, all the team members, and also how do we bring safety? Because I think that's a huge part, so that they answer in a way that's authentic, right? And not in a way that's contrived because they think change might be happening if I say the wrong answer.
Yes.
Or
Well,
not wrong, but
and those are two
yeah.
different, those are like, safety is a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
We can touch on it, but it truly is like
Yeah.
the psychological safety, like
Yeah.
none of this other stuff works unless people feel physically and psychologically safe.
Totally.
We make the assumption that like, oh, you look safe at work. You
Yeah,
look
yeah.
safe, but that actually that it's a low bar, right?
Right.
Because it's like if they're being reactive to anything that comes up, that this change can't be good, then they're not safe. There isn't a culture of safety that's present. So first, your question though is who gets it? Who
Right.
gets the questions are anybody who's being affected by the change.
So it's
Because by actually sharing out loud how they feel about it allows them to release how they feel about it, which can create an opening in them to feel differently about it when you actually present and process with it. Because here's the
right.
the big thing that is really missing in so much of this kind of communication and wanting people to move with a new plan is
Right.
that we have to give people time to integrate the change, or they're always going to be pushing against all their feelings about the past and all of their feelings about it that may not be relevant. They may not even want to have those feelings about it, but they're going to be there, and then they're going to manifest in different disruptive ways that you can't
Right.
put a finger on, because you
Right.
won't know that was because we changed this process last month.
Right.
Now you're doing this, which is in a different context.
Right.
But it's like it's when the integration isn't there. So everybody gets the questions that are and the questions can be like, hey, this is just for, we just want to understand where you're at and how you're feeling about like how things are working to inform our decisions. Well, that intent creates safety because it's saying, I want to take you into consideration and your feelings and your experience in the decisions I'm making. That establishes a context of safety and appreciation and being seen and included, even though I didn't come and ask, Melinda, you give me the best plan for this. I didn't ask you to do it, but I'm getting your input on it. And then they pre-process it by sharing with you in an email, would be easy and efficient. And then when you come in and you present it, the presentation is followed by a discussion, and the discussion is for the intention of integrating what is going to happen and how it's going to affect people, and integrating their feelings about it. Because human beings are driven by feelings. We go, keep feelings out of business. Well, work with robots, because humans are driven by feelings. So the more that you're into helping people to integrate their feelings, guess what? The less resistance you'll get for things that shouldn't. This change is not a big deal. Why are people acting like it is?
Right.
Well, it's because their resistance is rising because they didn't have an opportunity to actually integrate the change and how they felt about it, and how that, and the way they integrate that is by processing, sharing with each other, sharing out loud, sharing. How this happens typically when it's not facilitated by leadership is that people go away from the meeting and then they talk amongst themselves.
Right.
But depending on the culture and how either healthy or toxic it is, they either commiserate. If it's a really healthy culture and people feel safe and happy, they generally do the integrating amongst themselves. But you bring it into the process, then it feels like management and the team is actually doing that. Plus, what comes out of that integration is going to be really informative to the leaders of the people they're working with. They're going to actually see what's happening within their people that can inform their decisions about how to work with the people, because they're getting into their worlds. Because talk about silos, we're all siloed in our heads. And when leaders only talk to leaders and they cook up an idea and then they roll it out, then they're going to be coming up against resistance all the time.
Right. I hear from leaders, my clients, they go, well, we've given them time to process, we've answered all their questions, and they're still resistant. Like, from the leader's perspective,
what does that
the
mean,
leader
though?
feels like
we've given them time to process.
So they've given them time to discuss it in meetings over and over several times already. And so from the leader's perspective, the leader's like, okay, we've already talked about this. They're more wanting to move forward because they feel like they're still, the people, the members don't want to move forward. They're still resistant.
So what that tells me, Melinda, is that the processing, no one was heard in the processing.
And
so here's a really important distinction about human beings for leaders right now. Is that if somebody comes in and wants to be able to tell you how wrong everything is about how things are working and how they're going and how they would like it to be, they don't necessarily, for that to be a win and for them to reintegrate into the processes that is the plan that everyone is working, you don't need to agree with them or adopt all their ideas. And there is this resistance, like, well, if I let them say it, then I got to do something about it. The doing about it is hearing it, understanding it, and empathizing with their experience and letting them get it all out. This releases all that stuff. And you know what happens when they release all these feelings, these thoughts, and all that? You know what happens? The resistance.
Resistance goes down. Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And so it's really important to think in terms of the resistance and allowing. How, as a leader, are you allowing people to open and express and to release so it can be let go of, so that we can then come together again at an idea? Because a lot of this resistance that they're talking about is unconscious resistance. There isn't like, what should we do now? Well, let's have a coach. Let's have somebody do a presentation. Let's get a motivational speaker. It's like those are external things and those are fine. I'm not saying they're bad ideas, but I'm saying is that if you really want that resistance to release, then the processing has to be an actual formal processing, kind of like a reconciliation. It is not like one. It is a reconciliation. Like when South Africa did they did a huge, big truth and reconciliation, and I mean they were trying to reconcile like major trauma. I mean that's like gigantic compared to what companies deal with, right? But what made it work in that extreme of case is that people were heard and seen. And when they're heard and seen, they can let go of whatever petty, I don't like this, and you're making me do that, and all of this kind of, that gets released. They can let that go and be content.
I love that. And then the resistance comes down.
And then the resistance.
Because they're all the little petty stuff is all made up in their head because they haven't felt seen or heard.
Yeah, because the mind will generate lots of reasons.
Lots of reasons why it's not going to work, why it's not good, why it's not, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And stuff that isn't productive for anybody. And nobody feels better after it. And they still feel unheard. And then they still
Yeah.
feel like that this plan was railroaded, right?
Yeah.
So the big question is, how do we present this in a way so nobody feels like we're railroading this plan?
Right.
And you do it in such a way where it's like you give them some time to pre-process what's coming. You don't have to tell them exactly, but you want to ask questions to have them process around the changes you're going to make. And then you come in, you present it, then you do another round of processing, real processing and integration, which is them sharing how they, well, I don't like it. Say more about that. Well, this, and then focus on feelings. How does that make you feel? Well, it really makes me feel frustrated because I've been doing it this way and I just get uncomfortable about change. I got that. And then they hear themselves say that and go, oh, that's what that is, right? And they're even discovering as they're being heard and sharing. And the leadership doesn't have to go, okay, we're going to rework this whole thing based upon what everybody said. They're just going, I'm hearing this. And maybe there is some things that come out that might be good to tweak or change. But it's like, it's bringing people together and allowing the integration.
But so going to this, okay, I'm frustrated by this. I'm frustrated. So they said it out loud. And sometimes people just stay in their frustration. Like sometimes they're able to, like the resistance comes down, but sometimes they're just stuck.
They stay in their frustration if they're not heard.
Like there's times where I'm like, I hear you, I hear your frustration. And then we just leave it there. Like we just, hey, let's just be in this frustration. We get that. I get that. And then to transition them out of that sometimes, even I have
it may be more conversations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The truth is, if you really want harmony, you've got to do the work to have harmony.
Maybe how can we help you get out of this frustration? Is that a good question? How can we alleviate some of your frustration? Well, don't do this change then.
Well, I would caution against problem solving, right? Because so first off, their frustration isn't a problem. So it's like exploring the feeling, like, okay, so what's happening? When does this frustration come up? Is this something you feel every day? Because by exploring it deeper with them and asking more questions rather than going directly to problem solving, because where we tend to want to go is like, oh, let me fix this for you, Melinda. We're not going to fix anything for anybody. We're going to say you're capable of regulating and fixing yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, well, let's go deeper into this frustration. And the point of doing that is not so you can find out what you need to fix it, Melinda. It's so they can hear for themselves what they're saying and they get to it. Oh, well, and then they can maybe get to like, well, it just stresses me out whenever we change anything around here because it just does.
Yeah.
Oh, I got that. Okay. Well, what can you do to soothe yourself? Like, what would be a way to kind of like ease that for yourself? How could I support you in easing that for yourself?
Or like it could be like when did that happen? When did this happen before that has built up this frustration? Like talk about the different narratives that have created it before, like you said, asking, there is a part where you can ask them, how can you alleviate that? But even before that, there might be a lot of narratives that have created, like help them to talk about that.
Well, and I hear where you're going with that. So my only caution is this, is that the questions I hear you asking are questions that sound like you're trying to get the root of the problem to fix. And this isn't actually, there's actually not a problem to fix here. What there is a process to let them work out whatever there is so they arrive for themselves at what's left. Because once, when someone is heard and once they like air out all the stuff that they feel, then usually what they're left with is what the irritation is. I'll give you an example. A long time ago, I used to work in the events business, and I was an MC. I was also like coordinating the activities in the event. I was working with catering, and we had made some kind of change, and things were going really bad for the caterer. And the guy came up, and we moved a table, and he was furious.
Uh-huh.
And he just lit into me about like how I was ruining everything for him. And so at first I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm not ruining everything for you. I'm actually making this great for you. Like, this is kind of where I'm at, right? Because that's what I am there to do, is to make everything flow, make everything great. But in that moment, I was able to actually distinguish and going, oh, he's upset. We need to have him be unupset so he can actually see what he's upset about.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the kind of unresolved frustration that you're talking about, that is of piles of frustrations. And
Right.
so we need to get the pile expressed to get to the bottom. So he was like, you're this and you're that and you made this and he's like totally projecting it on me. He's blaming on me. And I'm like, that's fine. You could do that. And I stopped processing with him and I just said, oh, I get that. I hear you. What else? What else is there? What else is there for you? What else is there? And he just kept going and going and going. You know what happened? He was up here at like flip out, like he wanted to hit me with a chair. And then as he kept talking and I kept getting it and hearing it, it was releasing. And so it came down and down and down and down and down and down and down. And then he was almost calm. And I was like, so what's the challenge? How can I help? He's like, I don't want that table there. So where would you like that table? I want it over there. I'm like, great. How would that feel? That would feel awesome. I'm like, terrific. We moved the table. He went back to work and there was no issues the rest of the night. Like, you know, there was no stink eye either, you know?
Yeah.
So
I love all of this. I love this. There's so much value, nuggets. It's priceless, priceless. And
this has been so much
I
fun.
want to just keep on going because there's so much
Yeah,
stuff
right.
to dig into.
Stay tuned. Next week, we
Next
talk
time,
about.
I know, part 2 with Jason Jones. I think we should
Yeah.
do another one, but I mean,
Yes.
thank you so much for your valuable insight. It's really appreciated. It's always good to connect with you.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Melinda.
Listeners. Yeah, no, there's so much wisdom that you've just shared, and I really thank you for that. So
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah, I mean, tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you, what's new, and you have programs, like how do you?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. I'm easy to find. It's the name of my company is The Coaching Hour. What we specialize in is we specialize in transforming people's communication to shift away from positional conversations into collaborative conversations. A
Yeah.
lot of what we talked about today is like in that realm of like collaborating with people in your communication and doing that sort of thing. And the focus, our primary focus right now is for fractional leaders that are transitioning into their own consultancy because they're like, oh my gosh, how do I sell myself? And we really specialize in helping non-sales people become really good at enrolling new business and opportunities, not using sales speak or any of that, but by authentically connecting and relating and being able to see what's going on for somebody and having that awareness. And so this is what we work on. And it's been doing amazing results for people in their business and their lives. It's been so fun.
Yeah, because I mean, people see right through it. If like you're not connecting with them,
Oh yeah.
in the sales process, you're done. It's done. You're toast. So yeah, I love what you teach. I mean, I've always learned so much from you in the past and even today. So thank you again, Jason. Connect with Jason on the coaching and thecoachinghour.com. We'll put his website in the show notes. And so thanks again. I'll see you until next time.
All right.
Much love.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.
I love it.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. Are you curious on how you measure up with your ability to speak in flow? Come grab my free self-assessment at https://speakinflow.com/assessment. And I'll see you on the other side.